The first one will be a fee-for-service rural concession with 2 countries, Zambia and South Africa. Then we'll switch to microcredit schemes with presentation of what happened in Indonesia and a longer presentation on Bangladesh. I will introduce also what's happening in Kenya very briefly. And then in the second part, we see what's going on in China with various renewable energy technologies. What are the criteria? Decentralized generation, mainly with renewable energy. Large-scale dissemination, several hundred to 10,000 units, or even several 100,000, or even million units disseminated. I'm interested in this session in market-driven approach, market both for installation and maintenance. So market for installation means there is a number of systems high enough to justify local installers and sometimes even the implementation of local manufacturers. And a second market for maintenance, end users pay in a way or another for the maintenance of the systems, which enables small operators in rural areas to run an energy business. The state is still, or public administration are still there. They facilitate capacity building, they give subsidies, but they are not the main operators. They create an enabling environment for private operators or cooperative or small community operators to thrive. So my first cases will be on solar home systems, and I will start with a brief presentation of what are the 2 main models. So there's one model which is called the fee-for-service model. It's the model which has been used in South Africa at a large scale, in a smaller scale in Zambia, and a number of other countries, Uganda, Ghana, Benin, Togo, Cape Verde, Morocco, Argentina, Peru, Bolivia, Kiribati, Fiji have used this model. Now there is a second model which is called the dealer sales model with 2 options, either to implement a microcredit scheme. So that's what happened in Indonesia, Bangladesh, and other countries, mainly in Southeast Asia. And otherwise, you have also the possibility just to have a dealer who will sell systems without any credit. So it's a cash sale. And you have other variants, which I will not introduce in this presentation. They are less used. It is estimated that in the world 2.4 million solar home systems, maybe even 3 million households with a solar home system. But of course, this is an estimate, and nobody knows how many systems are really operational. What are the difference between the 2 main schemes? So in the first scheme, you have most of the time international funding coming either as a soft loan or a grant given to a government, who itself will give a loan or a capital grant to an energy service companies. The energy service companies will install and maintain solar home systems, and users will pay a monthly fee. In the microcredit scheme, it's almost the same process, except that energy service companies do not deal with funding at all. They leave this to microfinance institutions, which most of the time they are closely linked with. And the microfinance institution will provide a microcredit to the end user, and the end user will reimburse the microcredit. And so energy service companies will focus on the installation and maintenance of the solar home systems. So this, the fee-for-service model, called also utility model, is a model where you have energy service companies, rural energy service companies, who will maintain the photovoltaic systems, and they get a subsidy from the government to buy and install the system in their house. The clients most of the time just pay upfront a small installation cost, but only part of the cost of the system. So this kind of scheme helps to solve the question of upfront cost. The client end user will have to pay only a small installation cost, and also a small fee every month, and the question of maintenance, which is done by the rural energy service company. This model helps also to centralize decisions to aggregate environmental benefits of individual systems. Rural energy service companies can purchase in bulk a lot of systems, so reduce the cost of the system. Channel climate funding, not necessarily CDM because it's very complex to mobilize, but money coming from voluntary schemes. And it also helps to facilitate the enforcement of standards and code of practices by a rural electrification agency, who will have only to monitor few energy service companies instead of going in and visit each installation. So that enables to lower cost of systems for end users, reduce cost, administrative cost, and reduce the cost of the systems themselves. My first example, so it's in Zambia. Energy service companies have been selected in among existing local enterprise in 1998, and some staff trained to do the installation and the maintenance of solar home systems. The government gave a loan, the ESCOs bought the solar home systems, and they installed them in the house of their clients. Each client paid an installation cost of between 100 and 150 US dollars, and a monthly fee of 8 to 13 US dollars to cover running costs. The reimbursement of the loan given to ESCO was over 10 years, and they benefited from a capital subsidy of half of the cost of the solar home systems. So here are the three towns where the three ESCOs were located: Zambia, Chipata, Lundazi. So we are near the border with Mozambique and Malawi in the eastern part of Zambia. Those towns have been selected because it's a place where people are quite wealthy, farmers, civil servants. So there are a number of people interested to get electricity with solar home systems. A house, so this is just a picture of a house between Lundazi and Chipata with a small solar panel on the roof. Just a picture of a school near Chipata, so you have just few light. So it's a very basic system. So in this pilot project, multiple actors have been involved. The SIDA, the Swedish International Development Agency, the Stockholm Environment Institute, the University of Zambia, the Department of Energy of Zambia were also involved in monitoring and training, and a regulator issued license and defined code of practices and standards. In 2006, when I've conducted my survey in Zambia, the three ESCOs had in total more than 400 clients and a waiting list of several hundred clients. Two were fully operational. The third one was also operational but had some financial difficulties linked to the non-payment from a big end user, which was a public administration. There were otherwise a good record of payment. A few failed, so that is important to note. Each ESCO, so each town had employed 4 or 5 people. The social impact, there has been several surveys, was quite good. There notably extended hours of business for small shops, improved results for pupils in school who benefited from solar systems. But the financial equilibrium of each ESCO was very fragile, mainly because they have a limited customer base. They have each between 100 and 150 customers. And there is also the question of the inflation rate. At some point in Zambia it was extremely high, then it went down, so to 10-20%, but still very high. And as the components of solar home systems are invoice billed in US dollar because they are imported, ESCOs had difficulties after that. They need to increase the fee, and of course comes the question, are end users able to follow the successive increases of the monthly fee? This was a pilot project, so a quite important investment for actually a limited number of systems, 400 in total, and huge investment in terms of financial investment, but also in terms of human resources. The only system, it was a standard 50-watt peak, which was provided. And so this can also mainly be seen as a pre-electrification scheme because actually the grid has been extended to the 3 towns progressively, starting from by Nimbia and then Chipata, I think Lundazi. So that reduce of course the customer base just to the outskirts when the centers are connected, and then progressively the network is extended, and so the companies after that don't have any more business. So now we switch to a case of far larger scale in South Africa. In South Africa, there has been a massive rural electrification effort since 1994, since the end of the apartheid. More than 2.5 million households have been connected to the grid, but the government realized that there were a lot of households which were in remote areas unlikely to be connected, so at that time the estimate was around 1.5 million. So the government decided to implement, Department of Energy to implement the concessionaire fee-for-service scheme with solar photovoltaic. This has been adopted in 1999, and the initial target was to install more than 300,000 solar home systems. Currently, there are 3 concessions in operation, only 34,000 solar home systems, so we are far from the target. Subsidies which were given at the beginning to cover capital cost have been stopped for a while other PV projects were still going on. So we will detail a bit more of what happened. I've conducted several surveys on this scheme, notably one in 2006 in KwaZulu-Natal, in one of the concessions. So KwaZulu-Natal, the concession is near the border with Mozambique. So the Nura Concession, it's one of the biggest and considered as one of the most successful concessions in South Africa. It is a very large concession of 10,000 square kilometers, which is huge when you consider that you have only 11, so just above 10,000 solar home systems. So that makes one solar home system per square kilometer, which is very low density. So as you can see on the map, each green dot is a solar home system. So you have a cluster of solar home system, but anyway, that makes huge distance to cover from the north of the concession to the south of the concession. And to cover this concession, you have only 8 energy stores, which sell not just solar electricity, but also LPG, plus the headquarters at Mkuze. This concession with benefit from economies of scale, 70 jobs have been created, so it's a quite big solar company. How to manage so many systems? So there is a reporting system because the clients bring a token to the energy store to make a payment, and when there is a failure, problem with the system. The token, it is all recorded, everything is recorded on the token. And so after that, it is downloaded on the computer in the energy store, which then transfer the data directly to the headquarters, and then the headquarters can decide to send a technician. So here is a snapshot of the software which enables to manage the 10,000 solar home systems. So each dot, once again, is represents a solar home system, each green dot. And so each solar home system is located with a GPS position. And so when there is a number of systems in an area which needs to be needs the intervention of a technician, then you can bundle a number of systems, and the technician can be sent to repair them in one day. So here, just a picture of an the main energy store. It was a Natal, a house with a small PV system on the roof. And here, the detail of the cost. So capital cost, on one side, solar, it's 4,000 rand, so that makes, let's say, $500. On the other side, a grid connection would cost slightly more, between 10,000 and 15,000 rand. So that makes between almost, it can be $2,000. A subsidy is given. The subsidy is almost the same for solar and for grid, around $500. And the cost which remains, well, it is for the utility, as the subsidy covers main part of the cost, it's marginal, and for the grid, it's a lot more. Now, there is also the question of the monthly fee. So it was 61 rand, so something like $8 at that time. Half of it can be covered by a free, what is called a free basic alternative energy. But it happens that some municipalities give this free basic alternative energy, and some others do not, which create disparities between clients. So what are the lessons? What are the is it a success? Well, there are possibilities. It proves this case that when I saw that there was a good, quite reasonable delay in maintenance, so good system of reporting. Now there were some complaints, mainly linked to the small size of the system, to the cost of the fee, which even subsidized remain high for rural people, and the question of ownership of the system was not really understood. People were not aware if they were owner or not of the system. You had some difficulties linked to the coordination with grid authorities, which was very difficult, which means the grid could be extended in one area and without warning, and then you have the concession, the solar company has to find new clients elsewhere. You have a very technical but also political issue linked to fees, which some municipalities, as I said, cover half of the monthly fee, and some others do not, which means some clients pay a lot more every month, and of course this creates disparities and is a source of confusion. And also, last but not least, the lack of continuous support. The government at the beginning of the scheme was ready to be committed for a long time. It was supposed to be a concession for a long period, and actually there has been no real contract about this, and the subsidies were stopped at some point, which means that the concession could not expand. And so the business plan was including a lot more, was relying on the absorption of a lot more system, and actually it has stopped the plan at 10,000 solar home systems, and so that, of course, could jeopardize the sustainability of the business. Now, after 4 years of interruption, when I've conducted my last survey, end of 2010, there was a relaunch of this scheme, and each concession was benefiting of subsidy, a grant to buy in each concession, so 2,000 solar home systems, and also one of the 3 concessions. So as you can see on the red cycle on the map, one of the 3 concessions, KES, was also expecting to implement a lot more systems thanks to the support of the main funding sponsor. So what can we learn about this? Maybe we can discuss a bit more at the end with your question, but at least, well, very small companies like the one in Zambia have the benefit of being very close to the client. You have a solar company in each town, so they know well their clients. They can go visit them very quickly. On the other side, when you have a large company like in South Africa, of course, the logistic is a bit creates difficulties. The management is more complex. But as we saw on this case, as I've seen when I'm conducting my field survey, it can be overcome, which means it's possible to manage a very large concession. The difficulty after that is to reach a break-even point. Now I will switch to another, the second model, which is a credit sale, and I will start with the example of Indonesia. In Indonesia, it's one of the first large-scale dissemination of solar home system with this credit sale model. I take the example of this company called Sudimara Energy. They managed to install 30,000 systems. The company were providing a credit which was reimbursed in 4 years, and so more than 95% was repaid. And the cost of the system were very low because partly manufactured in Indonesia. Now, this was a possible success story, but then came the financial crisis of 1997, a huge devaluation of the local currency, and so a huge increase of the price of solar module, and the company stopped its activities. So lesson, well, loan and maintenance were done by the same company, and so the system were kept running, and so the customers were satisfied, but the solar business is a fragile business. Now, a more detailed example, because this one is still going on. Credit sale model, this time in Bangladesh. So you have first an agency called ESCO. It's a government-owned financial institution, which was established in 1997, which is playing a major role in bringing funding collecting funding from international organizations, from government of Bangladesh, and they have an investment portfolio which is around 174 million US, which is mainly invested in solar home systems, and so they give loan to partner organizations, to solar companies, who can then, after that, install or give microcredit to end users. So An obvious success story, Grameen Shakti, which is a subsidiary of one of the companies set by the famous Grameen Bank. So this solar company has been established in 1996. It installs mainly 50-watt peak systems and provides maintenance contract. And it has been able to rely on the extensive network of micro retailers from the Grameen Bank. Its activity, well, at the beginning, even with the support of the Grameen Bank, its activity at the beginning were, after 3 years, only 1,000 systems were installed. It's only after a loan from the World Bank that the solar activity took off, and now they have almost, now more than 600,000 solar home systems installed. You can see the growth. So this is the number of systems on which is installed every year. So now it's even more than 150,000 systems per year. 2010-11, and what are the different options given to the client? So it goes from a 40-watt peak system to a 130-watt peak system proposed, and you have the price which are on your right of each option. So it goes from 300 US dollar to something like 1,000 US dollar for the bigger system. So not only you have a number of options, you can purchase a system from different size, but you have also a number of options in terms of micro credit. Initially, after the loan from the World Bank, they proposed 3 options. First option was a cash basis one. First one where the client pays 100% of the cover all the cost and benefit from a 4% discount. Another option was to take a loan which lasts 2 years, and the client pays a quarter of the initial cost and has to pay an interest rate of 8%. And last option was a loan of 3 years with 15% of initial payment and 12% of interest rate. And now, today, Grameen Shakti propose 6 options. So a number of options have been added to the 3 basic options. So main lessons. It is important to keep the system running, to keep the customer satisfied. So otherwise, if the systems are not working, they stop reimbursing the loan. So the microcredit. So an annual visit from technicians are scheduled every year, so during the financing period. And after the financing period, there is a 1-year maintenance contract which is proposed for a few dollars per month. The diversification of loans and systems is very important to fit the needs of end users, and the importance of training. So a lot of technicians, mainly women, have been trained because women can go into the house and do the repair, which will be more difficult for men in Bangladesh. And they receive quite long training, so 4 years in one of, which lasts 4 years in one of the 45 Grameen technology centers. Other reason of the success, the costs are very low. We saw that the cost of a 50-watt peak was around 400 US dollars. So mainly because systems are manufactured in Japan. There is a need, and there was a strong support from an international organization to expand the customer base. And there is an already existing dense network of retailers who know very well their clients and so give credit to people. One of the limits I've noticed on one of the papers I've read, is maybe the quality of installation and components can fluctuate. So more stringent norms are needed. Now I will finish on solar home system with the cash cell models in Kenya. So this is very well known. There is no credit at all. It's direct sales. Hundreds of owner shops who sell PV systems. They can, but most of the time they do not install the systems. End user buy components of the PV system when they cannot afford to buy the whole system at once. And with this, more than 200,000 solar home systems have been disseminated. But they are very small systems, 10, 14 watt peak for less than $200 US. And so the limit are only a minority of rural inhabitants can afford to buy system without credit. People tend to buy the cheapest components. So the size of the system is too small, so customers are not entirely satisfied. Installation is not properly done, so the system performance are low from the start, and there is a lack of maintenance, which leads to early system failure. So this pyramid gives an idea of what happens with each option. With the cash option, you reach only a small percentage of people. Here, when you provide microcredit, then you can reach a higher number of people, between 5 and 20%. When you add micro rentals, so I haven't described its leasing, then you reach even higher number of people. And the fee for service is the scheme where you can reach the highest number of households in a given population. And then after that, you have social program where you give a lot of subsidies, or you provide small systems which are entirely paid by the sponsor. Each option, so I've described mainly the two. In the first dealer model, the dealer will have high cost and recover the cost very quickly because he is selling his PV system to the client. In the ESCO model, so the fee for service, for instance, the costs are still for the dealer, for the company, solar company, high at the beginning, and it will take sometimes a number of years to recover the cost and to reach the break-even point because the fees are paid over 20 years. So the cash flow for the solar company is completely different. Some conclusion there on the delivery mechanisms for solar home systems. So there is no best delivery mechanism. You have to make a choice and according to each country, and it has to be adapted to the local situation. You need to take into account the existing institutional framework and cultural habits of a country and the number of people you want to reach. In terms of finance, there is a necessity of external funding to cover capital costs and expense schemes to new customers. It's difficult for a solar company not to do without subsidies at the start. And even with subsidies and with a strong support from public authorities, the equilibrium of solar companies remains always fragile. There is always a tension between increasing the fees and the capacity of payment of end users. A strong coordination is needed between different actors, notably between the microfinance institution and installer when you have a microcredit schemes. Now, what could be the future of solar home system? Well, mobile phone, for instance, will have a strong impact. First, mobile phones generate demand for small load. You have half a billion mobile phone users who do not have electricity, so they need a charging point, so they may be interested in solar PV. And one other impact of mobile phone is now you have what we micro banking. You can use your mobile phone to make micro payment. So that will help to reduce transaction cost for solar companies. Now I will introduce, but very briefly, what are for each technology the current situation in China. So I will review dissemination of biodigester, of mini hydro, and small wind. So biodigester, it's a long story. I will not go through each, but it has started 80 years ago. And with the last National Rural Biogas Construction Plan, above 30 million biodigesters have been disseminated in China. There are two types of biodigester. The cost can be something like $300 US for a standard 8 cubic meter. First type, concrete biodigester. They need small or big maintenance periodically, and the newcomer is the glass fiber reinforced plastic one, where there is no need for maintenance. You can see a picture of a fiberglass reinforced plastic digester here on your right, and the increase of number of households who benefit from a biogas digester. So a sudden increase, sharp increase since 2000. So a large number of biogas digesters have been disseminated, but only 60% are operating. And mainly the ones who are not operating are the ones constructed before 1990, because they were poorly constructed, you had leakage. Technology of biogas, in some part of China it does not work well because there are too cold places, and so the productivity is very low, North China, for instance, and there was a lack of maintenance and technical support, because financial support from the government was given only for construction of biodigester, and there was and there is still not enough follow-up. Most provinces have only small rural energy offices with lack of staff, specialized staff. What are the technology and policy changes to improve the situation? So new technologies, the size of biodigesters tend to increase because the size of farms in China tend to increase, so that helps to increase the productivity of biodigester. And standardization, there are now 31 standards for biogas construction, and the government has invested a lot of money, but not just for the construction of new biodigester, but also to finance service systems. So 8% of the funding from the last plan were directed to finance service system to encourage the creation of local consultancy and emergence of service providers. I will introduce in a few slides the dissemination of small hydro in China. What is considered as small hydro is under 50 megawatt. Small hydro in China is most of the time connected to the grid. It's the responsibility of local government, while large hydro is the responsibility of central government. Small hydro benefit from preferential tax policy. The profit generated are reinvested in the improvement of local grid and new small hydro plants. State subsidies are actually not the most important. The ratio state funding compared to private and individual funding is 1 to 25. So small hydro is mainly funded by private and cooperative and individual funding. And so, end of 2007, you had 50,000 small hydropower stations, with mainly they were business, 30,000, so small hydropower business with shareholders. Just a curve of the accumulative installation in terms of gigawatt and annual power generation. So research and improvement to increase the efficiency of small hydropower stations, to have more stringent technical specification, and to establish standard planning procedures. What are the limits of dissemination of the small hydro plants in China? Most of the time, the low quality of equipment. When there is upgrading, it does not mean necessarily the use of new technology. The low cost of sale of electricity to large grid is, of course, a barrier to the extension of the, to attract private investors, and suboptimal use of equipment with low annual utilization hours, high distribution losses, and low automation. So a very large dissemination again, but with some limits. And now, just a slide on small wind in China. Off-grid turbine for rural electrification from 100 to 100 kilowatt have been disseminated. And this, the current situation is there are currently more than 500,000 small wind turbines which have been produced in China, 36 turbine production companies, plus 28 parts production companies. This has facilitated the emergence of a network of retailers for maintenance, and the state has done particular efforts in training technicians and produce manual for users. So what can we conclude on the dissemination of renewable energy technology in China? Well, of course, China is an emerging country. It has a huge customer base, so it's cannot be. It's very different from small fragmented markets like in most developing countries. Second point, the funding can be accessed at very low cost because you have public state to intervene with low interest rate. But nevertheless, there are some lessons for smaller developing countries. Some renewable energy technology are mature and they are already very cheap. And so they can be disseminated even in small African countries. For instance, biodigesters, the cost of can be manufactured and can be sold at a very cheap price. So, importance of nurturing a local market to help to implement local manufacturing, but that of course takes time. And importance, once again, of creating a local market for maintenance and follow-up of installation, because we saw in the case of biodigester and in the case of small hydro, that was not the case at the beginning. And so maintenance, when it is not done, will mean a lot of a system not operation. I provide here a number of references on solar home systems for each case I've described. Zambia, South Africa, Bangladesh, and a number of references on China also. And if you want to go further, you can find a literature review on the REEEP website, which has been produced by SERN, and also, I will recommend the document of the World Bank, which is on the design of sustainable off-grid rural electrification project. you have two software, and Homer and Read Screen. Read Screen is very well known, and Homer can be used to design on the ground hybrid system to compare cost and to design optimal off-grid systems. Both can be accessed for free on the web. And this is the end of my presentation. Fernando?
Yeah, okay. Excellent, Xavier. Many thanks for this presentation today. It was really interesting to go into concrete cases and then having a look on why it worked and also what were the limits. So that's a very, very useful session, Xavier. Thank you very much. So, well, let's maybe proceed with the session of questions and answers. So, well, Xavier, I maybe let you manage the relevant questions. During the time you have a look, I'll indicate well, where you can find the material of the session today. So you have the presentation already available. So it's in the lower right corner. You can download the presentation and recording in a few hours. Recording of this session will be available as well. So you click on Session 2, Sustainable Energy Regulation, and then you click on Browse to. Then you will be directed to Leonardo Energy webpage where the presentation is already available. This uses the slide share system, which means that in order to download to your computer, you need to register for slide share. As well, in order to respond to your requests to to network, you can join our LinkedIn group. So you have as well the link on the lower left corner. Then you click on the networking on LinkedIn, and then you click on Browse to. Very well. So Xavier, the floor is yours to proceed with questions and answers. Thank you.
Okay. I will start with, first question from Jonas van der Straten. How to deal with quality issues due to lack of ownership for the end users in the fee-for-service model? I think it cannot be overstated, the question of lack of ownership. Actually, end users do not behave so differently when the system belongs to the company. Of course, you do have tampering, you have theft, but in the case of Zambia, it was not an issue, so much an issue, because when technicians intervene regularly, they can control, monitor what's going on. In South Africa, in one of the concession, yes, there was a high number of theft, and of course you do not know when a system is missing if it is the end user himself who has taken the panel out of the roof of his house, or if it is really someone external to the community. But I think the question of property is, well, people may take care in a better way, may take more care of the system if they own it, but I'm not so sure of that. I haven't seen a real comparison, scientific comparison. A question from SEC. Could the model of ESCO for an energy efficiency? Yes, ESCO in Western Europe, it's used for energy efficiency. Here we are talking about different energy service companies, small rural companies, so sometimes we prefer to use the acronym RESCO, Rural Energy Service Companies. A question from Tanya Mijares. In your experience, the government is the main stakeholder. what is their reaction to ESCOs, taking into consideration that in my country, Mexico, we have only one energy supplier, that is a governmental enterprise. Yes, ESCOs are private providers, and so it means more or less you breach a monopoly when you have big utility who provide electricity, so they can be seen as competitors. But on the other side, they go in places which are very remote, and so it should not be seen as a direct competition by the energy supplier. One has to say, in South Africa, for instance, ESCOM is also a big energy supplier, and it's not much an issue. The problem is to coordinate to have a coordination between the utility and to know where the utility wants to expand its grid, and so to implement ESCOs in remote places where there won't be any grid extension for a long period. I think, comment from Eugenia Masvikini, I think one big lesson from South Africa is that rural electrification without additional capacity can be disastrous and constraining to the system. Yes, well, not just for rural electrification. We know that there has been a major power shortage in South Africa not a long time ago. So yes, you need to provide additional capacity. The question is with what sources, renewable energy one or conventional generation. Point from Rena, are there any case studies of microgrid application in developing countries? Yes, there are. I can give some references. Question of Eric. Is it prudent for donor agencies to embark on renewable energy projects which do not get any fruitful results in the long term? I think you mean notably the case of Zambia, because there has been grid connection. I think renewable energy projects, the one I've presented, when it is of REEEP, it has to be, some of them, especially for photovoltaic, it has to be in places very remote where we know that there won't be any extension of the grid for a number of years. When it is just pre-electrification, that is a gray area. Is it worth to do it or not? If we know that in 5 or 10 years there will be grid extension, that is more, can be debated. Now, some renewable energy projects do yield full result in the long term, and so what I want to emphasize is, as long as you create a local market, you do have a market-driven approach, you enable rural operators to manage their business, to make a profit from selling electricity, and so and then your renewable energy technology you're using are maintained and the projects are sustainable in a long period, and then you can extend your scheme to other places. Innocent Honor, as far as rural electrification is concerned, I think the small companies with relatively good technical competences are the groups that will make better social impact than large companies who may be highly profit-driven. Yes, it is clear that conventional electric utilities are not interested to provide electricity in rural places like the one I've described, because you don't make any margin. Actually, most of the small companies, even themselves, have difficulties they are struggling to survive, and so they are more a social enterprise, and you have to be very motivated to go in these areas. Vladimir Naumov, where to go looking for grants to finance this system? There are international agencies, I mentioned World Bank, but also regional bank, and you do have also funding, climate funding. So sometimes you have funding coming from voluntary schemes. People give money to compensate their carbon emission, and then you can use this money to install renewable energy technology somewhere. So I think there are a variety of sources. Now, the question is more, is there a local bank, strong rural bank or strong bank system which can venture into renewable energy technologies, knowing that they are considered as very risky. And in some countries, it's not the case. So that the countries have to rely on international funding. A comment from Jonas van der Straeten, repayment rate of 95% is hard to believe. Well, that's the data I have in several reports, so I can send. It's actually in the references I've provided in the and if not, I do have the references. What was, and you just dropped me a mail, slave growth. What was the monthly repayment paid by customers in Indonesia and Bangladesh? I'm not sure. In Indonesia, it was a project which has been disrupted quite a long time ago, in 1997. So, and in Bangladesh, I know it's issued a few US dollars, but I don't have there can be variation according to the sources. And second point from Safe Course, what do students pay in Bangladesh for training as technician? I do not know. Well, they have to, as I've said, mentioned in the slide, it's a long training, but and so they have to go away from their rural village for a long time. But I would think it's partly taken in charge by, but I'm not sure. Once again, when I'm not sure, the best is I will give a written answer. And maybe Fernando can put it somewhere or can disseminate it. Jonas van der Straeten, when did Grameen Shakti start to diversify load and system? They started with highly standardized system. Yes, they started with highly standardized system, and they've progressively diversified. I don't know, I don't remember exactly which years and when they started, for instance, 6 option with the loan, but it has been a progressive. Actually, they've learned by doing, and so they've progressively realized that it could be useful for them to diversify their offer of system and loans. Once again, I can provide a reference on this. Self-growth. Has there been biomass project attempted in Africa? I think there has been, but I do not know what are the results. Last point from Narendra. Do you think that incorporating local technical structure with rural setting, like local technician, a more proactive approach? Not sure what you mean. Do you think? It is important that the technician live and stay in rural places, if this is what you mean. So they can be trained in, of course, in the main university or elsewhere, but it is important that they are based locally and they don't have to travel from the other side of the country. An answer to Safe Growth. Okay, Fernando, I think I've tried to answer a lot of questions, maybe not all of them. And it's
you have, let's say, 5 to 10 more minutes. So I think there are many questions. So we will probably not have time to go along all of them. However,
yes, there are a lot of questions. I'm just at the
let's give some additional minutes, and then for the rest of questions, we will try to provide a global answer per topic. So, yeah, let's maybe keep talking 5 more minutes if you have time, Xavier.
Okay. Yeah, so several answers to Safe Growth about the biogas partnership program. I have nothing to add. Is it possible to have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation? Yes, it will be available on the website. So Naredran, do you think that revising the focus from merely using individual electrification units to low-cost solution like hybrid could solve the issues? So the issue, is it better to have individual systems or is it better to have hybrid systems? As I showed in a graph last time, it's better to have a combination of hybrid and small individual systems. Small individual systems when the households are very scattered, like it is the case, for instance, in KwaZulu-Natal. Households are very widely disseminated, so it's very difficult to have microgrid. But in other places, most of the time you can electrify the center of a village with a hybrid system and a grid, and to have individual systems for the outskirts. The thing is, with individual systems, each consumer knows exactly when to stop using electricity because, well, if it is a PV system, there is a constraint. The difficulty is when you have you implement a microgrid with, let's say, a small central photovoltaic system, and there's no metering, and then everybody uses the systems use the system. And metering does cost a bit of money because you implement meters in each house. So once again, if you use a software like Homer, you can draw comparison between each option, between each renewable energy technology, and available for a specific location, and for if it is worth to have implement a hybrid system with a grid. Trying to go through some other question. Amina, any ideas on how an ESCO can protect against theft? There are various systems to protect against theft. You put a number on the panels, which can be stored, and when the system is stolen, then the police gets the number, but that works when the police are interested to do anything about this. Otherwise, you can log the system or can make the system non-operational if it is tampered and panels are taken away. So that is an option, but the more you put protection, as been told, the more it costs money, and there's no absolute protection. And so solar panels, for instance, there is a black market in South Africa, and it's not so easy to do anything. When people, the best protection is a community, when you implement system in a community and everybody watch each other house, actually. When people are away during the day or for their work, then it's more complicated. Another point from Amina, what is the maintenance required for solar home system? For solar home system, you need to fill the batteries, you need to wash panels from time to time. For biodigester, it depends on the kind of biodigester, and I'm less knowledgeable, but there is a maintenance for concrete one, and for the last generation of biodigester, there is low maintenance. But it's mainly to clean the pipe and things like that, I think. And to clean the biodigester itself from time to time, I think. Are there cases, a question from Kapil, of business model where solar PV has taken off without government support? I do not think, except Kenya, which I've mentioned, but we saw the limitation of what happened in Kenya. People can buy the systems themselves, and it's a success story because you have 200,000 solar home systems in Kenya. So there was absolutely no government support, but people just buy very, very small system, and so it's not complete. They are not totally satisfied with it. A point from Franco Gonzalez, Zambia case, how the government decided which ESCO could be in charge. There has been a selection of rural entrepreneurs at the beginning of the scheme according to their capacity of extending their business to solar business. How was the capacity of solar home systems decided? Another question from Franco Gonzalez. The capacity it's always most of the time a standard 50 watt peak, which is linked to the size of the photovoltaic panel. And it's only with, for instance, Grameen Bank where you have a more diverse offer. Point from Miguel Cruz, do you know any biodiester Mexico? No, but there surely are, but I don't know what's going on exactly. We'll ask a question, could you share bibliography in a document alone? Yes, it is possible, I can do that. You can also refer to the document already available on the website of REEEP, which is a literature review on off-grid, which provides a lot of references, reports which can be accessed for most of them for free on the web. Answer on Mexico. Do we have still time? No, I think we are running out of time. Huh? Maybe one more minute. Fernando?
Yeah, maybe one or two more questions and then we will have to adjourn.
Raoul Barwa, in this case, R was made a choice in the delivery model. That is a good point. I think for the Bangladesh case, it was obvious that as there was an already existing network of microfinance institutions, and choice was quite obvious. Now, as you can see in Africa, so it's mainly, most of the time, more than often, till yet, fee-for-service because there is no, apparently no microfinance institution to mobilize till yet, because I know there are projects going on, notably with the World Bank in Tanzania with micro credit scheme and solar. I will try to pick one last question. Yeah, maybe a question from Franco Gonzalez. A relation between the capacity of solar home system and the rate of payment default. I don't think it's linked to the capacity of solar home system, but it's clear when the systems are not working, people instantly stop, and that is obvious in every case I've surveyed. People, when the systems are not functioning, they stop paying. That's clear. So they will default payment. Now, capacity of solar home system, of course there is an obvious limit. It's a 50 watt peak most of the time. So people are not entirely satisfied, but and some can't surrender their system if they have difficulty to manage to get enough money. But I'm not sure it's directly linked. Okay. Fernando?
Okay. Thank you very much, Xavier, for today's presentation. Very interesting session, very interesting questions as well. So I think we had a very constructive course today. Thank you everybody for joining. So see you again in the next session in January. So you have in the website of Leonardo Energy the whole program schedule. So do not hesitate to go back there. You will find the material of past sessions, so the presentation and the recording, and you will find as well the date and time for the upcoming sessions. So this is a course of 10 lessons. Good, so I let you, Xavier, to close the session.
Thank you, Fernando. So I would like to thank everybody for listening, and I just want to add that I will provide a written answer to the questions, so more detail with some references, which then can be disseminated by Fernando. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.